Hi, so good afternoon. My name is Jonna Williams. I'm a Senior Procurement Specialist with the Department of Procurement Services, and I will be leading the class today for responding to an RFP. So we'll highlight some tips and how-tos for responding to RFPs, and all competitive bids and RFPs, which are estimated for a value of over $100,000, are publicly advertised in the Chicago Sun-Times. So that's one way to find out what the Department of Procurement Services is issuing by looking in the Sun-Times. Bids and RFPs are also posted on our website, and the address is there, and you can view them, download them, and the website is updated weekly. Bid opportunities are also held in this room here, the bid and bond room. You can see what we have out. You can pick up any bids or RFPs that have been advertised, and we have CD-ROMs available for you. And also, you can add yourself to the takeout list. So as there's updates, addendum, what have you, you'll be notified of these if you plan on responding to a proposal or a competitive bid. We talked about the buying plan, which is a forecast of everything that we plan to have in the future, and is for the city as well as our sister agencies. Good networking opportunities are attending pre-bid conferences or pre-submittal conferences where you can meet prime contractors or learn information about the project and potentially network to become a subcontractor. For instance, if you're a certified firm and there's goals on the project, it's a good networking opportunity and a chance to learn more about projects. Our bid takeout list is posted on our website as well, so you can see which firms are interested in various projects if you potentially would like to network and subcontract. So what's the difference between an RFP and a competitive bid? An RFP stands for a request for a proposal, and it's a method of procurement to hire professional services or consultants to implement new projects in the cities with various professional service disciplines. It's project specific, and it's used when the city doesn't have in-house technical people, or we don't know exactly how to implement a project, so it's broader. We'll give you a general scope, but we're looking for firms to respond and give us a detailed how-to of how you plan to implement the project or how you see best to fulfill the services required. Competitive bids are a method of procurement where you provide a bid and the lowest responsive and responsible bidder is awarded the contract. So with a competitive bid, the city, we know what we want. We give you the scope of services and tell you exactly how we intend for your firm to fulfill it. There are proposal pages, and on the proposal pages, there's line items. So for every line, you provide a cost and give us a total cost, and ultimately, the lowest bidder wins. With RFPs, as I said, every aspect of the project isn't quite known. So we outline our objectives and a broad scope, and then we're looking for you to tell us how to accomplish this. It's not so much based on cost. Cost is a part of it, but ultimately we're looking for the best implementation plan or the firm that can best tell us how to do the project, and the price will be negotiated at the end. So you will submit your cost up front, but ultimately we'll negotiate that price, and we're looking for the most qualified firm. RFPs are judged by an evaluation committee, which is comprised of city professionals and maybe some consultants. And the evaluation committee, different individuals will get together and they go through your proposal piece by piece to see and understand who your firm is, your professional qualifications, and how you intend on providing the services that the city is looking for. So everyone should have a sample of an RFP in their packet of handouts, which looks like this. It's the thick stapled stack. And we'll go through there to see how it's set up and also to go over some tips and how-tos on responding. So the package you have is a standardized format that we use for all RFPs, and most of them are generally the same. For the MBE and WBE goals, for all city contracts, for the most part, we'll have MBE, Minority Business Enterprise, and WBE goals, which means a portion of the contract will be subcontracted to firms who are certified as either MBEs, WBEs, or both. That's for city funding. If the project is funded federally by federal funds, then we'll have DBE goals, and that's a disadvantaged business enterprise, and a portion of the contract will go towards the DBE. There's also a chance that there will be no stated goals, so if we have no firms certified or less than 3 firms certified, it will be no stated goals. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't any subcontracting opportunities, so we still encourage firms to utilize MBEs and WBs if you can. So the format of your proposals. Proposals should be submitted on 8.5 by 11 inch size paper and printed double-sided. We like you to use recycled paper. We discourage the use of expensive papers. Please note that anything you submit to the city will not be returned. So we'll keep everything that you submit. Most times we'll require that you submit 1 original hard copy, and then we'll request that you submit electronic copies, which are exact duplicates of the hard copy. We also, most times, will request that you submit a redacted copy, which is important because should your firm be awarded the contract or at the end of the process, we'll post the redacted copies. So if you have any privileged or confidential information, we don't want to post that. So if you provide a proposal, please submit a redacted copy which has anything that's confidential, such as your financial statements, blacked out. When you submit your proposals, each section that's outlined in the RFP should be clearly labeled, and the different aspects of the RFP should be put into sections. The RFP will outline the required content, so you'll want to be sure to go through the RFP in its entirety, look at what's required. As you're preparing your proposal, you'll put everything together, and at the end you want to go back over and look at the required content and ensure that you have touched upon everything that the city is requiring. Proposals should be clear, concise, and well organized. So, proposal content. We'll go over that. And as we go through the slideshow, we'll flip through the packet. So you'll see on the first page, it's the cover page. It has all of the general information, and it also has the procurement specialist who will be leading the project. So should you have any questions, should any information be issued by the city, it will come through the person who's listed on the cover of the RFP. For RFPs, we have pre-proposal conferences where you can attend, ask questions, get more information, meet with the stakeholder departments who are actually requiring the services, and as we said before, there are also good networking opportunities, so that information is listed on the cover of the proposal. It's also important that you return your proposal to this room before the due date. Proposals that are submitted late may not be accepted by the CPO. So as we turn the page, you'll see the first couple of pages are an optional survey. You'll see a table of content. When we get to page 1, you'll see the beginning of the general invitation, which gives you some general background information for the project and what we're looking for. Again, everything that we publish is published in the Sun-Times and also on our website, so there's the address of where you can find all information for the RFP and other opportunities. If you download the RFP from the city website, please be sure to contact the bid and bond room and add your name to the takeout list. Again, if we issue addendum or we have additional information to provide, those firms that are listed on the takeout list will be contacted. If you downloaded the RFP from the web, we won't know this, so it's important that you also add your firm to the takeout list if you don't actually pick it up from the bid and bond room. Going to page 3, you'll see there's a section with general background information, which gives you some understanding of what the project is, the background, what the city's looking for, and this will help you develop your implementation plan. Turning to the next page, it covers the scope of services and the contract term. So at the end, when the contract's awarded, it tells you how long the contract will be for, which is important so you know how many years or months that the services will be required and how long you're committing to provide services. There's more information on communications between your firm and the city, the pre-proposal conference. The deadline for submitting proposals is clearly outlined in these beginning pages, and again, it goes into great detail of what's required and how you should submit your proposal. Turning to page 6, you will see general information resources you may need, the procurement timeline, which goes over from when we issue it to when the proposals will be due, our website, and finally, when we get to page 7, we'll go through preparing proposals and the required information. So each RFP is going to be different. This is a sample of one that's currently advertised for parking enforcement. Again, it's imperative that you go through, starting at section 6, what exactly is required for this proposal. We have a lot of firms that do work with the city, and you may have a lot of contracts with the city. You should assume that when you're submitting your proposal that the people evaluating the proposal will not know you. It's often the case that the evaluation committee are not the project managers and the people who you may directly be working with the city. It's likely that it'll be a group of individuals that knows nothing about your firm, so you want to be sure that you clearly go through who you are, how you plan on providing the services, and the more usually is better. So the format of the proposals, we touched upon that. Turning to the next page, the required content of the proposals. So the first step in evaluating proposals is just looking at your proposal and establishing, did you give us what is in this required content section? So should you miss anything, you could be deemed non-responsive, and therefore your proposal will not move to the next phase where it's actually evaluated. It's very important that whatever we require, you submit that with your proposal. The first thing required is a cover letter. So your cover letter essentially is committing your firm to provide the services should you be awarded the contract. And here in the RFP, it indicates exactly what you need to include in your cover letter. So you'll want to tell us how many years you've been in business, a brief overview of your business, the legal name of your company, your headquarter address, a local address, the principal contact should we need to reach you or have any questions, that person, all of their information. Be sure to include email addresses. In your cover letter, you'll want to include a statement if you have any objections to the city's standard terms and agreements. Attached with the RFP, one of the attachments is a general contract which includes all of the city's terms and conditions. So for the most part, some things can be negotiated. However, some of our terms and conditions are a matter of law. We can't negotiate them. So you need to tell us up front if you have any objections to the city's terms and agreements. And also you want to note if in the RFP it states that we will not negotiate, that means we will not negotiate. So if there's a deal breaker for your firm and there's something that you can't do, you may not want to submit, or you need to know up front that if we say we won't negotiate, we won't negotiate. The next thing you need to provide is an executive summary. The executive summary basically is a brief statement, or it touches upon your understanding of our needs and our objectives and how you plan to achieve our needs and objectives. Next, you'll provide professional qualifications and specialized experience of your firm. So we have an exhibit where that'll be attached to every RFP, and please be sure to use the forms that are provided in the RFP for Exhibit 2 and 3. So Exhibit 2, which is located on page 38 of this document, is your company profile information. It's a standard form. You'll use that form to provide information about your company. And if you're a joint venture, you'll need to be sure to provide a copy of your joint venture agreement. And we have a schedule for joint ventures, which is on page 59. So if you're a joint venture, you'll have to provide the Schedule B located on 59. I'm sorry? Oh, page 59 is related to joint ventures. It's the Schedule B. So if you plan on teaming up with another firm, we'll need to know this and have a copy of your agreements. Moving to the next page, we'll ask for a minimum of 3 references for your company, and that's a standardized form that we use. It's located on page 39. This is Exhibit 3. So please ensure that if it says 3, you provide 3 references, and you also want to provide references that are for projects of similar scope or similar size. So if this is a grand project and it's a multi-million-dollar project, you wouldn't want to provide a reference for a very small contract. We want to see that what you're currently doing and what you've done in the past has given you the capability to perform the services that we're looking for. So please use the form that's provided and provide a minimum of 3 references. And note, someone from the city will contact your references. We'll be looking to see if you have the capacity to perform our services. So we're looking for you to tell us about the current projects or any obligations, commitments that you currently have. That way we can entail, or you're explaining to us that you can take on additional work, and we're looking to ensure that you won't be overwhelmed and you'll actually be able to provide services for the duration of the contract term. In order to do business with the city, you have to be licensed with the Illinois Secretary of State. So we'll ask that you provide a copy of your business license and your Secretary of State certificate of good standing. We'll also look at the professional qualifications and specialized experience, as well as local availability of your key personnel and the team that you propose to provide the services. So in addition to looking at your firm as a whole, we want to look at the individuals that will be working on the project. You'll provide references, a summary of who will be working. You'll identify each person's area of expertise and their role on the project. And all of this is outlined in detail, again, in the RFP. So the big thing that we're looking at is your implementation plan and your work plan. So this is the step-by-step how-to of how you propose to provide the services that the city is looking for. You'll see on page 11 for this project, it's quite detailed. Looking at page 12 and 13, there's a whole outline of what the Department of Finance is looking for in this project. Some RFPs are more general, some have great details. So again, please be sure to go through this section, and as you prepare your response and your proposal, look at all of the bullets, anything that's outlined, and ensure that you've included everything that we're looking for. And you should note that if the city has some mandatory requirements, some things that we're outlining that we have to have, if you have an exception or state that you can't provide even one, then your proposal will be rejected. So if something's mandatory, then you have to tell us how you'll be able to provide it and commit to providing mandatory requirements. As part of your implementation plan, you'll often see that there's a section called Approach to Providing the Services, which is outlined on page 13, and we'll ask for an organizational chart of your team and your firm. And that includes any subcontractors, suppliers, whoever you anticipate utilizing to provide the services will want to see that. As part of your plan, we also look at dedicated resources, which is on page 14. Often we'll ask you to tell us, will you have a dedicated office, a dedicated project manager? What resources do you anticipate dedicating to the city to get this project done? Often we'll ask for staffing plans. So if for a service like parking enforcement, you know, we have people on the streets writing tickets. So what staff do you have to fulfill the needs and roles of the city? Some projects are consulting, so maybe it would take 1 or 2 people to do auditing. Projects such as this, in addition to your firm, you'll have to hire a team and have a staff. So be sure to look and see what exactly you'll need as far as your team. The next thing that you'll provide is your cost proposal. For all RFPs, you will be provided a template of how you should provide your costs. It's important that you use this template to provide your costs. For instance, if we're looking for hourly rates and you provide, you know, rates based upon some unit of measure, that doesn't give us a way to assess your costs based upon other firms. So in this RFP on page 40, you'll see the template of the cost schedule. So we need you to use whatever schedule is provided in the RFP and insert your cost in this schedule. And if the project is, let's say, 5 years, you'll need to provide costs for 5 years. So if year 1 was 2018 and the project doesn't end until 2023, you may not want to charge the same rate in 2023 that you do in 2018. So you'll need to clearly outline what your costs are going to be for each year, because once you're awarded a contract, those costs are locked in. Unlike with competitive bids, we don't do price increases. You won't get adjustments for your costs. You'll tell us up front how much you're going to charge, and then that's how you'll be compensated. So for the cost proposal, we do have some incentives that you can apply for, and that will give you somewhat of a competitive edge. So we have an incentive for city-based businesses. If you're located in the city, you would submit that incentive, and then at the end, when we're looking at your costs, we would deduct 2%. So this is not off of the cost that you will be paid. This is just for evaluation purposes to give you incentive over other firms for an awarded contract. We have incentives for veteran-owned businesses, for alternatively powered vehicles, and also for commitment to use people with disabilities. The next thing that you'll provide with all RFPs is your financial statements for 3 years. It's important that you give us information for 3 years. We understand that some firms may be new or startup, so we're not so strict on what you provide. You need to provide something that will help the city assess if you're financially stable in order to perform these services over the term of the contract. Next, you'll provide a compliance plan, which will detail which minority and women business enterprises you anticipate subcontracting with. With that, the Schedule D, which is submitted by the primes, and that form is located on page 65 for you to see. That's filled out by the prime contractor, and then the firms that you anticipate subcontracting with must fill out the Schedule C1, and an example of that is located on page 64. If there's goals associated with the contract, meaning there is a percentage for minority business enterprises and women business enterprises, you must submit Schedule Ds and Schedule Cs showing us who you anticipate working with, The firms must be certified by the City of Chicago or Cook County, and a copy of their certification letter has to be submitted with your compliance plan. The special conditions are located on page 41, and they go into great detail of the program, what's required, and how to submit your forms. For all contracts, we require an economic disclosure statement and affidavit, which is called our EDS. This is filled out online, and it gives us general information about your firm, your retained parties, any issues you may have, and it's for transparency of the public to know who the city is working with. There's instructions for your EDS on page 71. To submit a proposal, you will submit the EDS online, and there's a one-page certificate of filing that you can print out, which will be attached to the proposal. In the proposal, we'll also want to know any legal actions that are currently pending against your firm. Again, this is a tool used to assess if you're capable of providing services. Finally, we look for a commitment to comply with the insurance requirements. In the RFP, there'll be a section detailing what type of insurance you'll have to carry for the term of the contract. When you submit the proposal, we don't expect that you'll obtain the insurance because you don't know if you'll have it or not. So either you can provide a insurance certificate or just a statement saying that you'll comply with the insurance requirements should you be awarded a contract. So these are the major sections of the RFP, and these are the sections that you'll want to have separated and tabbed and put all together. So, you know, you'll have a section for your cover letter, a section for your executive summary, and what have you. So next, how are the RFP evaluated? We have a standard process for evaluating RFPs. So as I stated, the first assessment is just, did you provide all of the information that was outlined on the previous slide? Let's say there's a commitment to use MB and WB firms and you don't provide a compliance plan, you could be deemed non-responsive and your proposal will be rejected. Or let's say you don't provide a statement saying you will comply with the insurance requirements, your proposal could be deemed non-responsive. So the first assessment is just, did you provide everything that was required? The next assessment is phase 2, and this is the proposal evaluation. So the evaluation committee, which is a team of individuals employed by the city, will get together and they will read through every proposal that is submitted to the city. Once they've gone through every proposal that's submitted to the city, you will be scored based upon the information you provided. And the evaluation committee will consist of the subject matter experts, the project managers, the people who are looking for the services to be provided, and they're looking to see if you have explained how you can provide it and if your explanation meets the requirements of the city. As part of the phase 2 proposal evaluation, we may contact you and ask you for clarifications on what's been submitted. So that's something you should be aware of if we don't understand something or a piece of information was left out. Your firm will be contacted and will ask for clarification. After the evaluation committee meets and goes through your proposals, there may be a need for more information, or if it's a new technology or a new device that we're looking for. So then we would move to phase 3, oral presentations, product demonstrations, or site visits. So this would be where either we ask you to come into the city and present more information, or maybe outline in greater detail how you anticipate providing services. We may do this phase or we may not do this phase. So phase 1, where we check for responsiveness, and phase 2, where your proposals are evaluated by a team of individuals, will always happen. If enough information is provided in phase 2 for the EC to make a decision, or if there is a clear-cut firm that the EC can see, definitely exceeds the others, phase 2 may be the end and we'll move on to contract award. Or if, more information is needed, or it looks like there's several firms that could provide the services, we may ask you to come in for an oral presentation or come to your firm for a site visit and product demonstration. So the evaluation criteria, as we went through the last section with what's required, basically it's just confirming that you're professionally and technically competent. The quality, comprehensiveness, and adequacy of your proposal and management plan is going to really be looked at. So your implementation plan is really going to be looked at to see, 1, do you understand what we're looking for? And 2, have you clearly stated how you can provide our services? Your cost proposal and compensation schedule for an RFP, again, is not the judging factor. This will be usually looked at more towards the end of the process, where we'll go into contract negotiations and ask you to negotiate your price. If you provided a compliance plan, because there were stated goals, we're going to look at that and ensure that you have complied with whatever the percentages are. The firms you are anticipating using are actually certified in the area of specialty that you plan on using them. Legal actions, financial stability will be looked at, and we'll make an assessment or try to make an assessment based to the best of our ability to see that you're a sound firm and able to provide the services. The degree to which you accept the city's terms and conditions will also be looked at. Again, as I stated, some of our terms and conditions can't be negotiated because they're a matter of law. So we'll look at your acceptance of our standard terms and conditions to see how well you anticipate complying with that. And finally, we'll look at if there's any conflicts of interest. For instance, if your firm helped develop the scope for this project, that would be a conflict of interest for you to respond to it. So we're looking to ensure that there's no conflicts of interest with you providing the services. Once you provide your proposal, any questions that we receive must be in writing to the individual outlined on the cover of the contract. All questions will be answered via an addendum, so that makes sure that everyone knows what the questions are and everyone is provided the answers. So we won't provide answers to questions on an individual basis. We'll issue an addendum, and that's how all questions will be answered. One thing you should also note, after the RFP process has taken place, the city may determine that they don't want to award a contract in response to the RFP. So it's not a guarantee that we'll award a contract. And also, some RFPs, there may be several firms that are awarded contracts. So it may be one firm, it may be several firms, or there may be no contracts issued in response to the RFP. In preparing your RFP, we won't be able to compensate you for any cost. So that's something you'll have to consider. Again, we don't return any materials, and if you're not selected, there's no compensation for costs. So again, tips for preparing your RFP proposal. Please read through the RFP document in its entirety. You have to follow the format that's outlined, and general implementation plans are usually not good. You really want to be very detailed and get down to the nuts and bolts of how you're going to provide the services. Again, don't assume that the city knows your firm if you have current work or contracts with the firm. Submit all questions in writing. In order to be responsive, you have to submit all required documents and content as outlined in the RFP. Be sure to submit your cost proposal in the format provided in the RFP. In order to be deemed responsible, we're going to be looking at your legal actions, your financial statements, potentially your past work with the city. And be sure to note that anything that's listed as mandatory is a requirement. So if you can't fulfill any mandatory requirements, your response will be rejected. So tips for preparing your RFP proposal. Again, any exhibits that we have and we ask you to use those exhibits. Company references and client profile information are always standard formatted exhibits, which you should use. Your MBWB or DBE compliance plan has to be submitted on the schedules which are provided in the exhibits. Your EDS has to be filled out online, and you have to provide your certificate of filing. Your insurance certificate is not actually required until you're awarded a contract. However, you must provide a statement that you'll comply with the insurance requirements. Attached to the RFP will be a sample contract which details all of the city's standard terms and conditions, and you'll want to be sure to go through the standard contract as well. Read through that and make sure that you can comply, or if you can't, you'll want to include a statement of your comments and or objections in your cover letter. Before submitting your proposal, go online and make sure that no addendum were issued. It's a requirement that you acknowledge all addendum in your cover letter. So if you don't acknowledge the addendum or you don't see the addendum, something may have changed, which may change what we're asking you to provide, and we have to have you acknowledge it in your cover letter as part of being responsive. You'll submit your proposal in a sealed package to the bid and bond room at the specified date and time, and you'll want to be sure that you're here prior to the time as noted on the clock here in this room. Your cover letter must be signed by an authorized officer of your firm. Essentially, your cover letter is committing you to do these services, so it's kind of like a bid execution page. So be sure that if it's your president or someone who has the authority to contract on behalf of your firm signs the cover letter. Acknowledge any addendum in your cover letter. Pay close attention to the RFP instructions. What we're looking for, how we want you to outline it, will be clearly covered in the RFP. Again, submit your EDS certificate of filing, not the whole EDS, just the certificate that shows you filed an EDS. And it's also helpful to go through the RFP and create a checklist of what we're looking for and what you should have in your proposal. And before you submit it, you can go through the checklist and ensure that every aspect that we're requiring is included in your proposal. So I went through the evaluation and the award process. Something else to note is if you're looking, once the proposals are received, there's no clear timeline on how long it will take the city to respond. However, if you submit a proposal, we will let you know at some point whether your proposal was accepted or whether it was declined. So you will, at a minimum, get that communication from us. We won't be able to talk about the RFP until the contract is awarded. So if you submit a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information request to our department, that's going to be held until the contract is awarded. if you're not awarded the contract or not selected, you can have a debriefing meeting, which is helpful because we'll meet with you and go through what was missing in your proposal, and that could be helpful for the next time you submit a proposal, so you'll know why you didn't get the contract. But we won't be able to do this until the contract award process is finalized. Once your firm is selected, contract award is still contingent upon successfully negotiating a contract. So that's looking at your pricing and the terms and conditions in the city contract, whether or not you'll comply or you can sign that contract. And as I stated before, some RFPs will allow for multiple awards. These are usually called RFQs, requests for qualifications, and that process is you submit your proposals, they're evaluated, then you go into a pool of qualified vendors and will be issued task orders for smaller projects. So your firm or multiple firms may or may not be awarded contracts. So that is it for me. At this time, I will take any questions. Yes. The partnership should be solidified when you submit the proposal. And again, it's using the form which is attached, which we call Schedule B. You'll provide that. You'll provide your joint venture agreement. So you don't actually have to start working with the firm, but we do want to see your joint venture agreement and the Schedule B at the time you submit your proposal. So that will be projects, it'll depend on the project. You'll look at the sample contract that is provided with the contract, and that'll tell you living wage ordinances, minimum wage, all of that will be outlined in our sample contract. Oh, yes, sorry.
When you
have
ask,
a microphone for questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
because they can't hear you on the live.
Are there any other questions? Yes, we'll let you use the
I have
microphone.
another. When you have a project under 100,000, where do you go for that information?
So that information is also listed on our website.
Mm-hmm.
You can see all current bid opportunities, and that would be small orders. So
Small.
Usually RFPs are in our professional services section, or maybe in our aviation section. You'll see that the website is segregated by the type of contractor section. You can go through there and see everything that is currently available to bid on or respond to.
Okay, one last one. Do you guys have like a vendor rating system? So in other words, for some of the subcontractors, we basically value on how much their costs will be for a project, and if they only have capital for that project, we basically rate them at those type of value projects. Is there something that like that with the city or no? Okay.
No.
I'm John O'Brien with Department of Procurement Services. I work with Jana. That's a question that I would direct you to Byron Whitaker, who is our deputy over construction contracts. I do know that if you look in our boilerplate contract, there is talk of filing of a financial statement that gives some details about contractors' equipment and the value of that equipment. And I don't know if our construction unit is still coming up with a financial rating. I think what they've been doing is, since we get a lot of funding from the state of Illinois, for example, Illinois Department of Transportation, they've been relying on the financial rating or the overhead rate that's set by the state of Illinois. But there was a time when the city, especially through Chicago Department of Transportation, would come up with a financial rating for, and it was primarily for construction general contractors. What Jana is presenting today is more of the RFP process, where we're hiring a professional service consultant. And typically for consultants, the city doesn't do that. We're more looking at, as she's mentioned, qualifications, experience, what your rates are. It's not, I think it's more of a focus for the city, a financial rating for construction general contractors.
And we're looking at the prime, correct, and not proposed.
That is correct. It's primarily for the prime, because the city is contracting directly with the prime. But we do look at the subcontractors and what their, depending on the tier, what their capacity capabilities are. But ultimately, the responsibility is with the prime for performance. So there are provisions in city contracts that where the chief procurement officer has to approve subcontractors. So we'd look at the rates and what they're doing on the job, but ultimately the analysis is the prime, because they're ultimately responsible for the project.
Any other questions?
For the addenda, to receive the addenda, the directions on one of the bids said to log in iSupplier, search for the solicitation number. There's an easier way to do it? Or
Well, right now we have two categories of how to respond to competitive bids or RFPs. Currently, we don't have any RFPs where you'll be responding through iSupplier. There's nothing advertised right now. So for that type of project, then you would be responding via e-procurement, and yes, you would go into iSupplier. For the
Okay.
RFP process, right now, it's important that you would sign up on the takeout list in the bid and bond room, and that's
Okay.
how we would know to contact you. They're also
Okay.
published on our website, so before you submit your proposal, you can go on and just take a quick look to make sure you have all issued addendum.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't have it with me, but the city of Chicago, we are, as Jana said, moving toward e-procurement. So as we roll out the different contract types, you will, as a contractor or supplier, be able to go to the iSupplier portal and self-register your company. And if you go to that website, and I think we've got it on our homepage, it does go into a little more detail with instructions on if you're a current vendor. In other words, if you're already registered with the city, you've gotten a city contract, there's one set of instructions. If you're a new supplier, there's another set of instructions, so you would just follow the instructions on the website for the iSupplier portal. And there is a link on our homepage,
Yes.
which I
And,
believe is in your handout.
Your RFP document will clearly outline how to respond, if you need to register on iSupplier. Currently for RFPs, it's still the paper process.
And there is a workshop called Introduction to E-Procurement if you want to become familiar with how that process is going to be, because all of our contracts are transitioning to that. And the next workshop for that class is next Thursday. Yeah, and it should be in that workshop schedule that you have as a handout.
A question in regards to submittals. I like the idea of being able to submit a CD-ROM or a flash drive. Is there any requirements for that? Is there any specifications?
It's usually a requirement, and it's
Okay.
clearly outlined. Normally, we'll ask that you submit one original paper copy, and then we'll let you know how many electronic copies should be submitted with your paper copy,
Okay.
in addition to a redacted copy.
Anyone else?
Anything else? I left my business card with all of the sample RFPs, so should you have any questions or need anything, feel free to contact me in the future. And if there's no more questions, then